Hello and welcome to the Grand Mission with Marie, the channel for field evangelization. This fifth video in the series on the beasts of the apocalypse is dedicated to the mark of the beast. All Christians are already familiar with this mark and its number 666, but I will quote and analyze very interesting passages from the book of Revelation by St. John about the mark of the beast. These passages convey information about the nature of the mark, which one might not necessarily notice on a first reading of the book of Revelation. This information really gives the impression that the mark of the beast is a mind control technology operated by the false prophet. But first, let's recall the crucial role of the mark of the beast in the events of the apocalypse. In the book of St. John, those who bear the mark of the beast expose themselves to the wrath of God. Clearly, accepting or refusing the mark of the beast is the choice that will either damn or save. In the Apocalypse, John sees, I quote, "The souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony of Jesus and because of the word of God, all those who had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received its mark on their forehead or on their hand. They came back to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years." The text seems to say that Jesus will welcome the righteous who have refused the mark of the beast, a sign of worship of the beast, somewhat like resistors who would have refused to collaborate with the equivalent of the Nazis. But in our time, they are placed alongside the martyrs who were beheaded because of their testimony of Jesus, and thus they are different from them. These righteous ones may not be Christians when the mark of the beast seeks to impose itself, but they might become so during the events of the apocalypse, and the Lord will then reward their love of truth and justice. Conversely, according to the second letter of St. Paul to the Thessalonians, in chapter 6, those who accept the mark of the beast are those who succumb to the seductions of injustice and who have not embraced the love of the truth. This is why God sends them a deluding influence so that they will believe the lies, in order that all those who have not believed the truth but have taken pleasure in injustice may be condemned. These words of St. Paul, which I have just quoted, suggest that people who will spontaneously side with the stronger party at the expense of justice and truth, those whom the trials of the apocalypse will make hard, selfish, and unscrupulous with others, will be entrenched in their lies, as if they are going to be manipulated despite themselves to end up condemned. That is, sent to hell because of their sins, because they have approved the acts of the Antichrist. What is this deluding influence that St. Paul speaks of? Since it affects those who have worshipped the beast and its image, it presumably comes from the mark of the beast. For those who have agreed to bear it, the whole question is therefore to know what the mark of the beast will be. All, small and great, men, free and slaves, will have to bear the mark of the beast if they want to be able to buy or sell. It is the false prophet, also called the beast of the earth in the Apocalypse, who receives the power to animate the image of the beast of the sea, that is, the Antichrist. The book of Revelation describes the power and wonders of the false prophet to drive the earth to worship the Antichrist. I quote excerpts. "Then I saw another beast rising from the earth. It had 2 horns like those of a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast in its presence and compelled the earth and its inhabitants to worship the first beast, the one whose mortal wound had been healed. It performed great miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in the sight of men. It deceived the people by the signs it was given to perform in the presence of the beast. It told them to make an image of the beast. It was given the power to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who would not worship it to be killed. It caused all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. Thus, no one could buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. Its number is 666. The beast from the earth is referred to as the false prophet. Now, a prophet is a person who spreads and helps understand the word of God. At first glance, one might think that the beast from the earth is a great religious leader who will demand the submission of believers to the Antichrist. We have already seen in other videos that the Antichrist, as described in the Old Testament, is the persecutor of Israel. At the end of times, this Antichrist will be an Assyrian, meaning a man coming from a region mainly comprising Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. But we have also seen that there would likely be other images, other replicas of the Antichrist worldwide, and notably an Antichrist for the Christians. If the main Antichrist, in quotes, that is to say, the Antichrist, for Israel is a Muslim, it is quite possible that a religious leader in the Muslim world would call to recognize the Antichrist as the Mahdi. The Mahdi is the Messiah that Muslims await at the end of times. On the other hand, the existence of such an all-powerful religious leader in the West is not credible. Our societies are indeed too distant from religion. For that, unless a new religion is imposed by force, one that has nothing to do with the God we currently know. For example, a philosophy associated with transhumanist technology that would give people hope to surpass their human conditions. Jesus himself mentioned several false prophets at the end of times in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24. It is therefore quite possible that the beast of the earth represents several men in different regions of the world. Among them, notably, the Messiah of the Muslims, called Mahdi, or in Israel, the Messiah of the Jews, also called Mahdi. But on the other hand, the entire description of the mark of the beast in the book of Revelation suggests a mind control technology. First, the false prophet enforces the worship and the mark of the beast, but it remains possible to choose to refuse the mark. Bearing the mark of the beast will also evidently lead to committing serious sins. That is why Jesus will make himself known to all men before punishing. Specifically, individually, those who have ignored him and have borne the mark of the beast to worship its image. Indeed, after the opening of the sixth seal in the book of Revelation, the wicked understand that they have brought God's wrath upon themselves and they seek to hide from it. This suggests that the sixth seal is a great warning given before the beginning of the punishments, as if, from a certain point, it would no longer be possible to turn back. And indeed, from the seventh seal onward, God protects his servants, but only his servants, which symbolically in the text is represented by a mark on the forehead to protect them. Those who worship the beast and bear its mark will therefore be led to commit grave sins that will result in their damnation, tormented in fire and sulfur, more precisely, as the book tells us. One could therefore assume that the bearers of the beast's mark will be led to denounce or kill themselves, the men who refuse the mark. Another characteristic, the mark of the beast is imposed on men, regardless of their social conditions, not sparing an elite close to power. Yet, even in the worst political dictatorships, there is always a class of privileged individuals, an oligarchy that escapes the fate of the general population, precisely because it supports the dictator in power. It's as if, in the apocalypse, the challenge was to change the nature of man through the mark of the beast, and not just to impose by force the cult of a megalomaniac dictator. But above all, the mark of the beast is closely associated with the image of the beast. Now, it is the image of the beast that kills those who refuse to worship it, and not the beast itself. Or more precisely, it's the animation of the image of the beast that allows it to speak, and it's the speech of the beast that enables it to have its opponents killed. Thus, in Revelation 13, it is said, I quote, that the false prophet received the power to animate the image of the beast, so that this image could speak and cause all those who would not worship it to be killed. The beast from the sea represents a group of warring states, but also a man, the Antichrist, a leader from one of these warring states who will want to pass himself off as God himself, according to Matthew chapter 24. Now, the text of Revelation 13 about the mark of the beast clearly shows that it is the image itself of the beast, the image of the Antichrist man or an imaginary character created by him, that causes killing. It is not an army or a political police or any other group of people in power under the orders of the Antichrist that kills. The words, so that this image could speak and cause all who would not worship it to be killed, clearly show that the image is animated specifically for the purpose of identifying opponents to be killed. The words "all who would not worship it" give the impression that it is not possible to slip through the net of repression, as if an overpowering technology exceeded the ability of humans to escape the beast. These words, in any case, show that it is indeed a totalitarian system imposed by the Antichrist. It gives the impression of a Big Brother-like surveillance system, according to George Orwell's novel, 1984. This Big Brother would identify people who had evaded its mind control technology. And these people would be denounced or killed by those who have submitted to this technology, on the orders of the Big Brother Antichrist, who would have taken control of their brains. A bit like mind manipulation techniques similar to hypnosis used by secret services, like the CIA with its famous MK Ultra program, launched in the 1950s, for example. In Luke chapter 21, verse 16, regarding the end times, Jesus prophesies, "You will be betrayed even by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death." A mind control technology could indeed drive someone to the extreme act of denouncing a family member. In any case, this prophecy of Jesus brings to mind denunciations. Thank you. Under the power of Saint. With his persecutions against Christians and his totalitarian regime, Saint resembles a precursor of the Antichrist, much like Hitler, by the way. Stalinism may have been allowed by God to warn us of what will happen during the apocalypse, where we will have to fear not only what kills the body, but especially the mark that can kill our soul. Moreover, the translation of St. John's text mentions a mark carried on the right hand or on the forehead. However, in the original Greek text, the term that has been translated as hand, kairos, actually means with the help or intervention of someone. At the time, the help of someone to impose a mark necessarily involved the use of hands, since there was no technology capable of doing it, hence the translation with the word hand. The word translated as right, dedias, actually means correctly, from the hand that is accustomed to. The original Greek text, therefore, speaks of perhaps rather than a mark imprinted on the hand, a mark imprinted on the forehead by expert hands. This would therefore refer to a mark implanted through a complex technical process. Additionally, the Greek text uses a word for on in the expression on the forehead. That can also mean behind. I have included in the description a video that provides all the details of this translation. If the correct translation is behind the forehead, it means that the mark will be implanted not on the skin of the forehead, but in the brain. In fact, the apocalypse presents the mark of the beast as being used to forcibly impose a global political, religious, and economic system. The means used for this might very well be to take control of the brains of the people who have the mark's technology implanted. It is very possible that God will punish these people by turning these messages sent to the brain against them. In this scenario, the plague sent by God described in the Apocalypse might be, in whole or in part, visions transmitted to the brains of those who bear the mark, rather than actual events. In the end, even if the Antichrist is a political leader with great military power, the mark of the beast can only be conceived and deployed by the powerful who dominate the global economic system and the latest information technologies. The number of the beast is the number 6666, which is used 3 times in the Bible and only in connection with an economic system. In the Book of Kings, notably, the amount of gold that came to Solomon each year was 696 talents of gold. Those who bear the mark of the beast will also be marked with the number 666. This number could refer, for example, to the patent reference of the technology associated with the mark or the barcode of its components. The number 666 could also represent the economic system as a whole, since the barcodes present on every product sold today are composed of 3 large bars. At the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the code, which represent the number 6. So indeed, the number 6666 is symbolized today in all cases, barcodes of goods. Moreover, there are already technologies that allow interaction with the human brain from a distance. The only thing still missing is their large-scale deployment. This massive deployment could be done, for example, through vaccine injections. When we know that the wars of the apocalypse begin with the arrival of four horsemen, one of whom triggers epidemics, the rider on the pale or greenish horse. According to Bible translations, one can easily imagine the scenario that would lead to the mark of the beast. An atmosphere of chaos is triggered by armed conflicts, followed by the arrival of a severe epidemic because the inventive pharmaceutical industry will have succeeded in modifying a natural virus to make it very dangerous. This would then justify a massive and mandatory injection of the entire population, thus preparing them for the upcoming mark of the beast. Imposing a mandatory injection using nanobiology to penetrate the brain would allow it to be remotely connected to a computer. Brain-machine interfaces are indeed now well developed. Moreover, in 2021, the Chilean parliament passed a law on neuro rights, or brain rights, because it was believed that neurotechnologies are capable of implementing processes for reading and writing in the brain, allowing the recording of a person's mental data, and in the near future, modifying or adding new ones, to use the exact terms of the French press article that provided this information. We can clearly see that if an artificial intelligence is capable of interacting with us daily and influencing our thoughts, our psyche, it is the end of humanity as a creation of God. The one who controls artificial intelligence until it becomes completely autonomous and takes power will then control human souls. He will thus be able to erase from the human soul any aspiration to the divine and all the capacity for love that God has placed in us. He will be able to make us forget the 2,000 years of Christian civilization. However, it is evident that the men in power, crazy enough to desire to control human minds, are in the service of Satan, and not of God. Certainly, one cannot exclude that St. John's vision of a beast with a moving image simply corresponds to television appearances, without any mind control technology, and that he described what he had seen without understanding, of course, what it represented. I open a small parenthesis. St. John's account does not only concern our era, but what is, what has been, and what will be, according to the text of the Apocalypse. Because in reality, history is cyclical, with events that repeat throughout human history and that bring forth various types of beasts, images, and marks. But for the modern era, the idea of an omnipresent beast in the media is not the most credible, and this is for two reasons. The first reason is that the World Economic Forum in Davos, which brings together the most powerful men in the world, communicates a lot about technologies capable of controlling the brain, even if it is hypocritically to discuss the ethical issues they pose, and not to say, of course, that they have a project to enslave humanity. The second reason is that the omnipresence of the Antichrist in the media does not align with the intimate presence in everyone of the image of the beast for those who have accepted to bear its mark, as described in the book of Revelation. It does not align, not with the beast's ability to be worshipped so massively. In the Western world at least, the vast majority of people are incapable of idolizing a human being, especially a political leader. And the great majority of people are neither resistors nor collaborators, but keep away from the violence of power. Therefore, for God to no longer be able to redeem those who have taken the mark of the beast, for these to be so numerous worldwide, for this to lead God to intervene directly in the fate of the world, the power of this mark must undoubtedly be sprawling, invincible, except for God. However, people will have the possibility to escape it. The figure of the Antichrist is likely not so much a warrior leader who will exist nonetheless, but a virtual guru preaching a false religion. He may be generated and animated by a great artificial intelligence. Willing human brains will be connected to it. Indeed, it is very possible that people will know that by accepting the mark of the beast, they will give access to their brain. But as they will prefer their earthly life to the integrity of their soul, they will try to persuade themselves that the Antichrist is not malevolent and that they will benefit from it. Whereas if they had the love and courage for the truth, they would not have deluded themselves. They would not have surrendered to the power of deception mentioned by St. Paul in his letter. The prophecy from the Old Testament book of Daniel announces that before the great persecution by the Antichrist, I quote, "Intelligent people will instruct many, but they will be overwhelmed by the sword, fire, captivity, and plunder for days. They will thus be refined, purified, and made white." Will we be among these intelligent people? Will we be part of the Church of Philadelphia, that of the beloved Christians? To this church, Jesus promises, "Because you have kept my command to persevere, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come upon the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. Hold on to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. To the one who overcomes, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he will never leave it again." Thank you for listening to me. Feel free to like and share this information. And why not join us in the non-virtual world? Have a good day, and may God bless you.